What is going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to make this quiz app with React. This is going to be a step-by-step walkthrough on how to make this. First thing you need is Node.js installed. So you're going to want to go to nodejs.org/en and download this latest stable version. And once you have that installed, go to vitejs.dev/guide. And what this is basically how we scaffold our React app. This is a bundler. Once you're on this page, you're going to want to scroll down, find this npm create vite at latest right under this npm 7+, and you're going to want to copy this template command. And once you have that copied, you're going to want to go to your text editor and go to your terminal, navigate to the folder that you want this project to be in, paste that command, and the first thing you want to do here is change this view to React and change this my view app to whatever you want to call your app. So I'm going to call it tutorial, and then I'm just going to press enter. And then as you see, it ran the scaffolded the project. So now it just tells us to cd into that folder, run npm install. And the only way npm install will work is if you have Node installed. All right, so now we have everything installed and we can go ahead and run this scaffolded app. So to do that, we're just going to write npm run dev, and it's going to run at localhost 5173. All right, so this is what we start off with. We're gonna delete most of this. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna open this folder. All right, so I have the Vite app opened up now. We're just gonna navigate to app.js and delete everything within the app div. And I'm just gonna write hello world for now. And I need to restart the server. All right, so now we just have hello world showing. And I'm just gonna clean this up a bit because there's some stuff that we don't need. I'm gonna delete that, delete that, delete that, delete that. I'm gonna go to app CSS and delete everything. Now we have our starting point for this app. First thing we're gonna do is actually get this mock data in here. So I'm gonna go to this source file, or this source folder, and I'm gonna make a new file called data.js. And this is gonna be where we're gonna get our questions and answers from. I'm gonna export a variable called questions, set that equal to an array. Here I've got objects with an ID of 1, question, what animal has the longest lifespan? Answer ID. And this is answer ID is going to be the ID that references the answer in this next array. Then we have our options array, which is going to be all the options that we can click on. And this ID is going to be where this references to. So I just have a couple of these, or a few of these. I'm just going to copy these over and I'll scroll by so you can copy them too. Scroll through so you can see them. First, we're going to import useState from React, and we're going to make 4 different pieces of state. First one is going to be current question, and I'll explain all of these as we go. We're going to set this equal to the first question. So let's go ahead and import that. So this is a named import. So questions in curly brackets from, in my case, it's going to be in the same folder as app.jsx. So it's going to be ./data. So now our default use state is going to be the first index of questions. Our next state is selected option. We're going to set that to null. Next state is finished. This is going to be what indicates whether or not we're actually done with the quiz, to show that end screen. Set that to false. Then we're going to have our score, or this is going to determine what our percentage is at the end. We're going to set that to 0. All right, so next step is adding some markup. In our app, we're going to have a div. This is going to have a class of quiz. And in this, we're going to have 2 divs. We're going to have one with a class of info and one with a class of options. And in this info div, we're going to have a paragraph, and this is going to have a class name of question counter. And we're going to say question. We're going to render the ID of the current question. And under this, we have a span, which is going to be our total. And we're going to render slash, so out of questions.length, so the length of the questions array. And this span is going to have a class name of total. Under this paragraph tag, we're going to have another paragraph tag called question. We're going to render current question.question. That's everything for the info div. We're going to render the options for each question. So we're going to say current question dot options dot map. We're going to loop through these and render a button for each. So we're going to say option I is the going to be for the key that React wants. So we're going to say button, and this is going to have, for now, an on click, just returns null. Disabled is going to be based on if selected option is not null. So if there's actually a selected option currently, and we're going to have a class name that we'll deal with shortly. Just going to set it to an empty string for now. And last is the key that React wants. So we're just going to say key equals I. And in this button, we're going to render the option text. So option.text. Change this option up here to just option, not options. Lastly, we're going to have our button that says next or finish. This is going to have a class name of next, a disabled property that is based on if there's no selected option. So if selected option is falsy or null, it will be disabled. So you can only click next when you have selected something. And we're going to add that logic soon. So our on click is going to be, for now, return null. We'll pass a function in that soon. So the text that we render is going to be current question.id. Is that equal to the last questions ID? Is current question.id equal to questions at the index of questions.length? So the length of the array -1, because indexes start at 0 instead of 1, .id. So if they're equal, then render finish. This is a ternary, this question mark right here. And if they are not equal, then render next. Let's go ahead and add the logic to when you click an option. We're going to make a function called handle option click, and it's going to take in one parameter called clicked option, and we're going to go ahead and pass this into this on click. So we're going to say, we're going to change this null on this on click for the option. We're going to change this to handle option click and pass in the current option that we're iterating through. So this option that we're getting from each iteration in the dot map, it gives us option. We pass in this to handle option click. So in this function, we're going to say if selected option. So if this piece of state right here has a value, if we've already selected something, then just return out of it. So basically don't execute the rest of the function. We're going to say return. So if selected option is not null, then return. If we get past that, then we're going to have another if statement that says if the option that we've clicked, so that argument right there, .id is equal to the answer. So the current question .answer ID, then we're going to add to our score. So set score plus 1. We're going to move on. We're going to set the selected option to whatever we clicked. So pass in the clicked option to set selected option, selected. It looks like I might have an error of some sort. Let's see. Question is not defined. Oh, line 48, I put question. It should be questions. All right, so now, I forgot to delete the default style. So go to index CSS and delete everything under this root. Just delete that. So I'm back on app.jsx now, and I have a warning. Oh, this should be on click, not on clicked. Silly me. Okay, so we have our buttons here. So when we click one, this is no longer disabled. Next step is we're going to handle when you click next. So we're going to make a new function called handle next question click. So in this function, we're going to say if there's no selected option, this should never really hit anyways, but you just want to be safe. And the reason that you do that, even though you can't click it, is someone could go into elements and select it and then just delete this disabled flag, and it's not disabled anymore. Next part, if we get past this if statement, have another if statement that says if the ID of the current question that we're on is equal to the last question in the questions array, the last ID of the question in the questions array, we do that by questions.length -1 .id. So if these IDs are equal, then set finished to true. So if you click next when you're on the last question, then finished is now set to true because you're done. Else, we're going to find the index of the current question. So this is going to say const index of current question is equal to questions. We're going to use the find index function. Find index is basically giving you a callback function that runs This right here will run as many times as you have items in the array. So it's going to find the first index of something being true. So in this case, what we're looking for is we want to return true if question.id, so this question right here, the ID of that question is equal to current question.id. And that is going to be the index of the question that we're on. So we're going to set the current question to questions at this index right here of the index of current question plus 1. So the next question after the current question. And then we're going to set the selected option to null because we're on a new question now. So next is we're going to actually pass in this function to the next button. So scroll down to our next button and replace this null. So on click, or replace this whole function right here with handle next question click. This is the same as you writing an arrow function here or a regular function and passing in the event. So I'm going to save that and click one of these, click next, boom. So now we're on question 2. Next thing we're going to do is actually add our finished screen. So I'm going to scroll up to under this div, this quiz div, I'm going to put curly brackets and I'm going to say finished. So our finished state right here is finished true, then render a div. This is going to have a class name of end screen. We're going to have a paragraph tag in here called finished. And we're just going to write finished. Under this, I'm going to write you scored a, we're going to have a little calculation here, 100 times parentheses. We're going to say score divided by questions.length. That's going to give us our percentage. And then we're going to actually append a percent sign on there. Lastly, our button that says retry. This button is going to have a class of retry button and an on click of a function that we have not made yet called handle retry click. And we're going to take that, I'm going to copy that name. I'm going to go under here and make a new function called handle retry click. This function is pretty simple. We're just going to put set selected option to null, set current question back to our first question. So questions at index 0, set score back to 0, and set finished to false. We need to finish this ternary. So we have the first part, but we don't have the second part, which is go down to the bottom of this, write a colon, and write another parentheses. And we're just going to grab our info div and our options div. And I'm just going to drag this into those parentheses. And it's giving us an error because because we have 2 divs at the same level. So I have this info div and this options div. So I'm just going to write a fragment. This is a React fragment. It doesn't actually go onto the DOM as a real element. It's just kind of there for assistance from React. So I'm just going to drag this into here. Now we don't have an error. So just going to make sure this all works. I'm going to zoom in. Blue whale. Let's go ahead and add the correct and incorrect logic. So go to your options div and go to this empty class name. These have a class name of option, and then we're going to have a string template and open that up. We're going to have 2 ternaries here. We're going to say is option.id equal to the selected option.id, and this right here, optional chaining, and this basically short circuits this expression. So if selected option was null, we wouldn't get that error that you normally would if it was just like this. If option.id is equal to selected option.id, then have another ternary that says is selected option question mark. So another one of these .id is equal to current question .answer ID. So if the option that we've selected, if that ID is equal to the current option that we're in, the ID of that, then run this ternary, which is checking if the option that we've selected is equal to the current question that we're on. So if that is true, render the correct string. This is going to go into our class. If this is false right here, this will already be true at this point because we're in this ternary. But if this is false, then render incorrect. We need to handle this outer ternary. This is going to be colon quotes, and going to format that a little bit so it's a bit more clear. And if you notice, I'm going to click on one of these with our inspect tool, and I'm going to click load locust, which I guess was incorrect. And you see this incorrect class added to the button. So that is going to be what controls how our styles work. So to actually see these changes that we just made, we need to add some CSS that is pretty vital to the app. So I'm going to go to app CSS. First, I'm going to reference our quiz container. Set a max width of 500 pixels, margin, and auto right here centers it horizontally. Display of flex. We're going to set gap to 20 pixels. This is horizontal now because of flex. Going to set the background color to #6, padding to 20, border radius 15, px 1 px 15 pixels, RGBA. We're also going to change the background color of the app itself. We're going to change it to this kind of white instead of this darker color. We're going to make it responsive. So say media, max width of 540 pixels. We're going to make it flip down. So say quiz, class of quiz, give it a flex direction of column. When you shrink the screen, it flips down. Give it a little padding or a little margin on each side. Now our end screen, give it a display flex and gap of 10 pixels. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. Go to your index CSS, and if you notice, this has like a ton of spacing here. We're gonna actually add a reset. So star, which targets every element on the document, margin 0, padding 0, gets rid of any defaults, and box sizing, border box. That's a good one to have. So padding doesn't add to the width of things. Next is our info div, width 100%. Let's go back to that. This right here is our info div. Display flex, flex direction column, gap of 10 pixels. We're gonna make the question, the question counter, the first part of it, a little bigger. So info.question counter, and this is also gonna apply to the finished class. Font weight, make it kind of thick, and set it to pretty beefy font size, 1.5 rem. Question counter total, drill in a little bit. We're gonna set that a little smaller, font size 1.15 rem, looks kind of cool. And we're also gonna put info question here because it also has 1.5 rem font size. Next is our options. So these right here, these are our buttons, are our options. Display flex, flex direction columns, so make them into a column instead of a row, which is the default for flex stuff. Gap 5 pixels, width 100%. Next is the options, or the buttons in the option div. And also, this is also going to apply to the end screen retry button. Border radius of 5 pixels, padding 5 pixels, font size 1 rem, so 16 pixels. Text align start. Oh, options button. Cursor pointer. So when we hover over these, we get that little pointer cursor. Usually want to do that if it's something you can click. Color white, border 2 pixels, solid, and this really light shade of blue. Gonna have a transition of 2 transitions, 0.1 seconds ease background color and 0.1 seconds ease border color, 0.1 seconds ease color. So everything's gonna be real smooth when we hover. Next, we wanna just target these options for the question. We're gonna say options button with a class of option, background color, transparent, nice. Then we have our next and retry button, options button with a class name of next, and our end screen retry button. We're gonna set these to align self. When you're a child of a Flexbox container, you can align yourself horizontally. Instead of it filling the width, it's gonna just fill what it needs to fill to surround itself. Background color of BABFD1. And we're gonna have a slight text shadow, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and RGBA 0.2 for the opacity. So you can just kind of see it a little bit better. Then if our next button is disabled, we want to give it an opacity of 0.5. If we hover on the option button or the retry button and they're not disabled, we want to add these styles. Hover, And then we're going to use this not function. So if it's not disabled, we're also going to use the end screen retry button, the hover property on that, or the hover event. We're going to say background color is E8, E9, ED. Border color, the same thing. Color black, and remove the text shadow. See, next is disabled here. If it's not disabled, it has a hover now. Next is going to be buttons that don't have an incorrect or correct class. When they're disabled, this is going to be their style. So button not correct when it's disabled, and the same thing, but for incorrect. We're going to give that a color of white and a cursor of not allowed. So I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of like a crossed out circle there that indicates you can't click it. We're going to give the buttons with correct or incorrect a color of white. If they have a class of option and a class of incorrect, same thing for correct. We're going to give that a class of white, or a color of white. And we're going to take this, copy that, and this is going to be only for the correct button. If the button is disabled from like it is now, this will still have this background color we're going to add of green. If we've chosen correctly, we now have that green, and the other ones are disabled. So now the same thing for incorrect. I'm just going to copy all of that, write incorrect and incorrect. And here, I'm just going to write crimson. So now if we click an incorrect one, that works pretty well. So if you liked the video, feel free to subscribe and give it a like, and check out the other videos I have, some other React component stuff. But yeah, I've got more projects coming down the pipeline. Thanks for watching. Peace.